Welcome back, players. I'm Jack with ThreeSixCancel, and this is Coco the Weiss Cat. And school is back in session. What? Summer school? This womps. Don't worry, kids. This is a short class. But it is part of a new course that ThreeSixCancel's College of Anime Card Games is offering. For lack of a better name, we're calling it Tutorial Afterstory. So you've started to play Weiss Schwarz, right? You know how to attack, how to calculate power and damage, and most importantly, how to win. But there are plenty of things that you think you could do better. There's a lot of finesse and fighter decision points around abilities and choices you make during the game. Maybe you feel like you don't quite have it down. Or maybe you feel like you've got a good handle on it, but another perspective wouldn't be so bad. Well, Tutorial Afterstory is here for you. The point of this new series of videos that ThreeSixCancel is working on is to help you take the next steps into becoming a master Weiss Schwarz player. So in this course, we'll be focusing in closer on some of the core elements and mechanics of Weiss. We explained how a lot of them worked in the tutorial series, but we didn't go too much further than that. When should I use this ability? Is it worth it to pay stock out here? Should I stop attacking? These are all questions we want to help answer. So to do that, each video will have its own subject to focus on. And in the first video in this series, the thing we'll be focusing on is brainstorming. No, for the last time, not that brainstorming. This brainstorming. The one where you pay stock, maybe tap some characters, and put the top 4 cards of your deck into your waiting room. So we already know that there are a lot of different brainstormers. There are ones that search, ones that salvage, ones that add more soul or more power, ones that draw, and some that do other weirder stuff. But the key part is, for it to happen, you need to have a climax in the 4 cards you put in the waiting room. But we know how brainstorming works, so when should we do it? Well, that's a more subjective question that's going to depend on the deck, the player, and the state of the game. There's almost no way to answer definitively whether now in your game is a good time to brainstorm, but what we can do is share with you some tips and tricks that will help you make the decision a little clearer. Lesson 1. Calculating your chances. So for any brainstormer, you need to hit a climax to resolve the ability. So the question you need to ask yourself is, how likely am I to hit a climax? Well, count your climaxes, count your cards, and figure it out. No, you don't have to count the cards in your deck every time. You can get a pretty good estimate just by looking at the field, your stock, your hand, and your waiting room. But the important part is, how many climaxes are left in this stack of cards, and how likely am I to hit a climax if I mill 4 of them? Or, if you plan on brainstorming multiple times, how many in 8 or 12? It's just quick mental math and really basic stuff on brainstorming, but it's an important foundation for our next tips. Lesson 2. Check for your target. So you're level 3, well compressed, and you're ready to kill your opponent. But you're missing that one key card. There's a level 3 that you need to make it all come together. No problem, we can brainstorm for it. You mill 4, hit 2 climaxes, and dive into your deck. But it's nowhere to be found. Players, look before you leap. If you're looking to search or salvage a specific target, always check to make sure that it's in your deck or your waiting room, depending on which type of brainstormer you're using. The waiting room is easy, but the deck is harder to check. If a card is an important target for you, make sure you remember when it goes to your stock. Since your stock is the only blind zone besides your deck, just remember about having one less of it in your deck if it goes there. But this is a great place to hit on another quick rookie mistake. Let's say you only have 9 cards in your deck. You have 2 climaxes in there as well as your target, so you're feeling confident you'll strike gold. But on your 4th card, your target winds up in the waiting room. When you're brainstorming, make sure that during the resolution, there's not a high chance you'll lose the only thing you're looking for. The same thing goes with salvage brainstormers. If you refresh during a salvage brainstorm, what are you going to pick from? But we're still on common sense stuff. Let's move on to something a little more specific. Lesson 3. Card counting. And this isn't the type that will get you thrown out of the Grand Marquis or whatever the they call it now. In Weiss, it's perfectly legal to pick up your deck and count how many cards you have left, so long as you don't look at them face up. So in a state like this, where you have around 15 or less cards in your deck, it's good to count them. Let's say you're planning on playing a climax this turn, and you have 6 cards left in your deck. You're fine, so you decide to brainstorm. But now look at this. Because you only had 2 cards left in your deck after brainstorming, your climax doesn't get refreshed. 4 cards for the brainstorm, plus 3 cards on the attack, means you used 7 cards before your climax went to the waiting room, and you only had 6. make sure that you're brainstorming in a way that makes sense for your refresh. But this rolls us into another lesson. Lesson 4, Mitigating Damage. If we go into a similar case where you might have 10 or so cards left in your deck and none of them are climaxes, brainstorming is a great idea. Why? Because attacking only uses 3 cards. Those other 7 cards are just free damage for your opponent. Taking 4 off of that means you'll refresh sooner and have more chances to cancel damage. In Weiss, compression is key, and if you find yourself with a deck that's low on climaxes, you want to move through it as quickly as possible. Brainstorming is one of the best ways to do that. So it's not always about hitting climaxes, it's about moving through your deck in a smart way. But before we wrap up, there's one more lesson. Lesson 5, don't brainstorm yourself out of attackers. So here's a situation. You have 3 cards you can play and no characters on the stage. One of them is a brainstormer. So you have a choice here. You can attack with 3 characters, or you can brainstorm with a tap 2 brainstormer in hopes of finding more stuff. If you miss, you're looking at a single attack. And not attacking in Weiss is like not rolling the dice in Monopoly. The momentum you lose is just immeasurable. Gambling like that on a brainstorm usually isn't a good idea. Now, of course, this is different if your brainstormer doesn't need to tap anything, but usually they will, and tapping your only attackers, even if they're back row characters, can land you so far behind that you might not be able to catch up. Like almost all things in Weiss, there are exceptions to this rule, but use it as a general guideline. It's usually not worth it. So there you are, players. 5 valuable lessons in brainstorming that can help you know when and when not to brainstorm. Let's summarize and close this out. First, before you brainstorm, you should have a good idea about what your odds are of hitting a climax. Just know the odds though, because of course in real life it never actually plays out in a way that makes statistical sense. But it's the best we can do, so let's move on. Second, if you're looking to search or salvage a character, or draw into something good, make sure you actually can. Have a good idea of where your targets are in terms of stock, deck, and waiting room. Make sure there aren't 4 copies of your finisher in your waiting room before you search your deck for them. Third, if you're close to refreshing, make sure you know how many cards in your deck and how it will affect your attack and refresh. If you don't have enough cards to brainstorm and attack before you refresh, any climax you play that turn, or plan to discard before your turn ends, won't shuffle back in, and any card that you might want in your waiting room after your attack won't be there. This is definitely something to watch out when you're using changes that happen during the encore step. Fourth, brainstorming is a great way to move through a non-compressed deck. If you're sitting on a fat stack with 2 or 3 climaxes or, God forbid, less left in it, brainstorming brings you closer to that refresh you need. It's a good option if you're still in the mid-game and want to refresh quicker to early play too. And fifth and finally, don't brainstorm yourself out of attackers. It's almost never the right answer to let attackers go. Sure, there are some situations, but not many. So if you have brainstormers that tap, and you would need to use your only potential attackers to brainstorm, it's probably not a good move. Of course, there are other nuances to brainstorming well, but they're way more situational. As you keep playing, you'll figure them out on your own. Or maybe you'll see your opponent do something and you'll say to yourself, hey, that was a great move. The important thing to remember is you can take these concepts further and evolve and build on them during gameplay. Approach each game with an open mind, and you'll find yourself playing better games in no time at all. This is the end of our brainstorming video, players. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope these tips help you out. Tell me your thoughts too, or how some of these concepts help you out below in the comments section. I'm not big on the social aspect of YouTube, but I do love hearing from you. I read all the comments on my videos, and the feedback so far has been wonderful, so thanks a lot for that. And as always, thanks for watching, players. Peace.